Well, I had talked about this before, how the soil around this area is. Now, it varies, in different places in the area. But I was glad to see I don't have to deal with that one layer of that, what I was referring to as lake concrete. It is in this particular spot, which is where I'll be building right in this area. Though, I might run into it, especially a little bit south here, because I know when I put in that fence line over there, I fought with that on every hole. But like I was saying, like from here, I've got a hole about 4 feet deep there. And the first part is that good loamy soil, but that's from the leaf mold, over the hundreds of years. Then it starts turning into this sand, and you got this real fine sand. And about here, it starts turning into clay. Now, normally, right at this spot is the layer where I run into that, what I was referring to as concrete. But various theories on what this is, and I talked to a geologist one time, and he couldn't understand what it could be. But somebody suggested it could be volcanic ash, because this has been around a long time, so we got to think back a long time. Or it's almost like a limestone from a sediment where this, because there's really no rocks around here naturally. This is just an odd layer in the soil. But this was at one time that big inland sea, so this was all underwater, and the part here is kind of the area where it ran off into the lake. But normally this is where I run into that, and it's a bugger because it's right at the spot where you can't put a fence post. You really have to go deeper, or the fence post isn't going to be set decently. So I end up breaking up that layer that can be up to like 2 inches thick, and it really takes a crowbar to break it up, and then you got to pull each piece out. And once you get beyond that, then you get into this, it's pure clay. It starts out a little sandy, and then it gets into pure clay, and there's quite a layer of this. And then eventually, as far down as I could go with this digger, I'm getting nothing but clay. But eventually you'll break out of this clay and to get into this really fine silver colored sand that is the water bearing layer. See, the water table around here is not far down. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to come in the morning and find water in the bottom of this hole. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I've done it before where I was fencing and you come in, there's water in the post hole. I did see there's certain flecks of this hard material in here, but there wasn't that heavy layer. So that's good. That saves me that digging. But like I say, after you break through this clay, you get into that water-bearing sand. Though there are spots here where I've hit this, after you get out of this kind of a gray clay, you get into this bright yellow clay. And then you have to go a lot deeper to hit water. But, it's interesting. You never know, when you dig a hole around here, you never know what you're going to find. Because the way the land was kind of created. But it's really good clay too. Though that yellow clay that's some slimy stuff when you get water on that. One time there was one spot even in my driveway, one spring I got the tractor stuck. I buried it right down to the frame in that slimy yellow stuff. Then I had to get a load of rock just to fill that hole to get it solid up again. This stuff is just cold too. But it's good if I don't have to deal with that, because I have to do some digging in here. And if I can get away, the sand digs nice and the dirt digs nice, though you do have roots and stuff in here. But when you get into that clay, that ain't bad. But if you have that layer in between, it's really bad. clay is bad only in that it sticks on everything. You know, even on the postal digger it sticks. But interesting to see. And we'll see what happens in the morning. See if I get water in there. I've often thought about, you know, my garden is just across here, and I've often thought about putting a sand point out in there. But like with sand points, you can't. You really have to dig a hole to get through that clay. If you try to drive a sand point through that clay, it just plugs up the screen on the sand point. So you have to dig down, and I use one of those. They're a postal digger, but they're the auger type, and you can just add in sections of pipe. And I've gone down 20 feet with one of those. You know, and then you get into that water-bearing sand, and then you can drop a sand point in. But if you try to drive it, it just plugs up in this clay. But I have seen where people, they'll put in a sand point, and you can get out of that water-bearing layer. You can get down too far, and then you're back in clay again. You know, you got to really pick your spot and your depth. But it's interesting. But I'm relieved to see I don't have to deal with that concrete layer in there. It's going to make it a lot easier. And then I do get down to the clay, I've got a good solid base, because that's solid stuff.